Welcome everyone to today's video. This is Wabani's Bookbird, and on today's video we will be talking about how I take notes of the story, how I basically accumulate all my feelings for the story that I'm reading. Now, one thing I do use, and is just a general notebook. It could be anything. For example, I love dogs notebook. It's little, it's kind of has nice lines in it, so which allows me to just, write scribbles in, write thoughts of stuff that I like, stuff like that. It's always good to have a notebook, I think, when you're reading, because it's just a good way of just saying how you feel, things that you like about it. So if you come in, especially for reviews, if you're doing a review, I will say, please have a notebook. Having a notebook means you don't have to then reread the whole book all over again. Yeah. To then having to then see, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. Just notebooks are the best thing. Even just for doing to-do lists. I mean, does anyone else uses the notebooks for to-do lists? I do all the time. I have tons of notebooks. I've even got one for this channel, for example. They're just so underrated. You just gotta have a notebook. Now, because I forget things, because my memory is not brilliant, I also have a page where I just write down what my colours for the sticky notes mean. This then enables me, if I take a break from reading because of my head, for example, I can then come back to my little sticky note wallet thing that I have. And then each colour I will then use depending on what's happening. So if, for example, pink, it's like a friendship family. Dark pink is romance. Red is red is danger. My apologies, red is danger. Yellow is annoyance or anger. Orange is happiness and hope. Blue is sadness, fear, and negative emotions. Green is development in a plot, so if there's been massive big plot development in a paragraph, I stick that on there. And my purple is just for mystery story, any magic, because that way then if I want to talk about, for example, the magic system in the story, just have to find all my purple bits if I need examples, or I then move on to these things. And at the beginning of my book, example Caraval, which as you can see is filled to the brim with different sticky notes. Look at all the sticky notes. You can just make little music with it. Anyways, it then has, I then fill it with sticky notes at the front. So for example, my green one on this side, characters. Especially in fantasy worlds, you always find there's tons of characters, and occasionally I forget who they are, and then all of a sudden they become relevant, and I'm like, I should have kept track of you. Why didn't I keep track of you? So this is the way I do it. And I also write a bit of a description about the character, so then I know, so this person, last time we met this person was a bit dodgy in character, so when I next see him I'm like, you, keeping my little eye on you. My blue ones are for plot. So if something big has happened, I write them on here. This allows me then, when I come back to the story, if I, for whatever reason, I can then go, what just happened? Right. This bit of plot, that's just happened. Boom. I know what's going on. It then helps me get back into the story much more better, I will admit. So that's what I do there. And then I generally just write thoughts about how I felt. Like Caraval for book 1, I wrote not too much, but just a bit of thoughts of what I felt as I was going through it. I like writing quotes. I think quotes are pretty, especially when I find one that really just, resonates with me. For example, every person has the power to change their fate. They're brave enough to fight for what they desire more than anything. Said by one of the characters called Nigel in the Caraval series. I think I'd like to maybe get used to writing more notes. And write a bit about the covers of books. Whether I liked it, whether I didn't like it, the country of that, where that cover comes from. All three of my Caraval books in that series are the American editions of the covers. And then that one, if I then end up getting an English version with the English version of the cover on, I can then be like, I prefer this or that, or not. Just helps. So I'm writing themes, like some of the big themes that I've seen in the book. So yeah, that's pretty much how I do my note taking. I write on sticky pads. Sometimes I even put it onto a Word document, which I can then use for my scripts, for my reviews that I do. This just helps me to formulate what I'm trying to say a bit more clearer. I can then have examples that I would like to use to help express my opinions and to help back those up. As I said, everything that I say is just your opinion. Like, this is what works for me. Everyone has a different thing that works for them. So yeah, it's just a brief introduction of how I analyze the books that I'm reading to help me formulate my reviews. Now, I don't want this video to be too long. However, I am going to go really, really, really quickly into how I work out what score I give something. I'm going to go more into this. I'm going to go more into this when I do my Caraval review. But for now, I just want to do a brief introduction of the 5 things that I look for in a book. So for me, there's 5 things that I look for in a book, and these 5 things help me to work out sort of how I judge a book as a whole. So for each of these 5 sections that I look for in a book, I will give it a score out of 5, and then I will then work out, an average of what that score would be for that book. The first thing that I look at when I am reading a book is world building. To me, that's really important. Like, nothing's worse when you're just there reading a book going, oh yeah, that part makes sense, that makes sense, and all of a sudden, what? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why is that happening when that contradicts something else that's earlier in the book? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you gotta have a world that makes sense. If you don't have a world that doesn't make sense, your plot kind of struggles to work within that, So for me, the world, it's important. It has to work. Now, of course, each book varies depending on what is happening. For example, what the plot's about. It's when a world goes against what's already been set out, laid by the author earlier on in the book, or earlier on in the series, that can kind of ruin it for me sometimes. I also like the world to just, logic is a really big crucial part of this. Like, even in fantasy worlds, like, things have got to make sense. If something doesn't make sense, then it just ruins it. I mean, non-book related, but a good example, I think everyone would agree, is Game of Thrones TV show. Towards the latter part of the season, well, technically from season 4 on, but mostly season 8, it just went completely against the world that they built, and people hated it for it. And it's a good example that I can think of out of my head, because it's one that shows what happens when you build up a really nice world and you then just trash all over it. Thankfully, not a lot of authors struggle with that. I mean, George R. R. Martin, for example, he's kept to his world he had no influence to the latter part of the TV show. That was all they're doing. The other point is, even in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is the book equivalent, which I definitely recommend if you enjoyed the first half of Game of Thrones and you want to see what happened, partly, read the books. Always read the books. So yeah. Oh, another example is Rick Riordan's books. The films have completely trashed his world that he built for his characters, and you know, no one remembers the films. Everyone just loves the books. So yeah. Second thing is character development. For me, character development is so crucial in a book. Like, it's just important. Especially because the thing is, if you have big stuff happening in a world or in a plot, this has to affect the characters in some way. Having the characters not being affected by this, unless it's an intentional thing, can ruin a story for me. Like, there's been times when I've been reading and I've gone, why hasn't this character reacted to this? Like, this is really big, what's happened? Like, if it was me, I would react to it. Like, there's some things when something happens, you need to have that kind of reaction to it. So yeah, character development is really important. The third thing that I'll look at is story development. Now, story development is really important. You've got to have something to entice the readers into reading more. I like to think that the best sort of story is one that can balance these two things quite well, because I think having something where you have character development but you also have story development means they can kind of evolve together, and I think that's important, especially when you see like things that happen in the plot and how that influences what, you know, how the character evolves, their attitude towards things, their attitude towards other people, the relationships. All these have an effect, and I think it's really, really, really crucial to have these two develop as they go along. And the fourth thing is language. I think language is really important, especially in YA books, mostly because sometimes, and adult books as well, you have language used and you're just there like, what do you even mean? Like, you're reading something and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is he trying to say? Or what's he trying to say? What's the author trying to get across? I don't understand. And that's the worst thing. So yeah, language is important. Also, there is nothing wrong with using beautiful language, like mystical kind of language, that kind of thing. Like, just as long as it makes sense. As long as it's logical and it makes sense, it's all good. It's all good. As long as you get the point that you're trying to get across clearly. Communication is important, especially in a book, especially in a story. It's so important, and if you don't have that, you don't have a good story. It's, you know, that kind of simple. And the last thing is pacing. Oh my god, pacing is so important, which I will say, pacing in this story, it's one of the things I dislike about it. I like the language is beautiful, but the pacing, it struggled with it. And the reason being is because one minute you can be reading a couple of chapters and you're like, oh god, this is like never ending, it's so slow, nothing's happening. And then the next minute, a whole lot of things happening. What's going on here? And that's not good. You want something that ideally you want to have a consistent pacing, although that is very subject to what book you're doing, what your story's about, what your characters, what's happening in that moment. Of course, pacing is depending on what's happening. Like a lot of action-driven scenes will have quicker pacing than other ones, but you want the story to flow well, and you want the reader to be able to breathe in parts, but also not be dragged down with too much information, because too much information in one go can really, really take them out of wanting to read more. And I think that's important. So pacing, it's a complicated one, but it's a crucial one too. That's really, really important to the aspect of the story and how well it works, and you know, the story that you want to tell with these wonderful characters. So yeah, those are the 5 things. You will see more when I go into this review right here. Caraval is my first one that I'm going to review on this channel, and I hope you come for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.